Good morning, everybody. This is an exciting day for the Denver Broncos and our fans. We're excited and proud to introduce George Paton as our general manager. I just want to start with a few things. One is I'd like to thank John Elway and Vic Fangio and Patrick Smythe for all the hard work they put into the search process. It was a lot of work in a short period of time. It moves fast when you realize you've got some really good candidates in your initial round of interviews, and you don't want to lose your opportunity to get one of those candidates. And with that said, I will just say I spoke with and want to thank Champ Kelly and Brian Stark and Dave Ziegler and Terry Fontenot, who I understand was officially given a job this morning. All of those four candidates were excellent, and they were very impressive, and it made the decision very, very difficult. The NFL is in great hands moving forward with talented up-and-coming executives such as themselves. Let me just say this. From the beginning of our interview process, George Paton stood out to us. He is a seasoned, smart, and steady person, steady executive who is going to be a great asset for the Broncos for many years to come. He's going into his 25th year in the league. His depth of experience and knowledge is very impressive, from drafting and developing talent to working with the support staff. We're very, very lucky to have a man of his caliber and very excited about his addition to the Broncos. With that, I'd just like to turn it over to John Elway for a few remarks.
Thank you, Joe, and good morning, everybody. I think that Joe said a lot, covered a lot of it. We're very fortunate to interview 5 candidates, as he said, that were all tremendous candidates. And as Joe said, George stood out from the very get-go. I think if you look at George and his experience, 25 years in the league, his reputation throughout the league is tremendous. And I think one of the key things is, I think when you look at George and his history, is the fact that he's had a lot of opportunities to go other places. And I think when you look at a man like that and you say, you know what, he's not going to jump at any job. He wants to find the right job. And I think that when you show the patience that George showed, we're very fortunate that he liked our situation and he chose to come to Denver, which we're thrilled about. But I think that shows a lot about a man as far as what kind of job he wants, what kind of success he wants to have, and it's not just about the money. So we're thrilled that George did pick us, and went through that process, did a tremendous job. I think we have a bright future with George and his history and evaluation, as well as his connection throughout the league. So we couldn't be more happy to have George coming in as our GM. I think, like I said, he's going to do a tremendous job, and I'm looking forward to working with him and supporting him and anything we can do to give him the best opportunity to be successful, which is what we want to do. So it's a pleasure for me, and I guess I will at this time introduce George Paton to everybody. And George, welcome, and it's all yours.
Thank you, John and Joe, for those kind words. I hope you all the media out there, I hope you're all safe and well. I look forward to meeting you in person when we can do so. First things first, I'm honored, I'm humbled to be the general manager of the Denver Broncos. This past week has been amazing, for me and my family. It's been quite a ride, but I've been here now for 4 days and I'm ready to get to work. We have a lot to get done, but it's been good being here, meeting people, understanding their processes, and just look forward to getting going. I want to thank John Elway, Joe Ellis, and Vic Fangio for this special opportunity. I thought throughout the interview process, we were connected early, and we connected throughout the process. I thought we had similar visions. I thought we were like-minded, and I know we are aligned. To be asked to take the GM reins from John Elway, with all he's accomplished in this organization as a player and executive, that's an incredible honor, especially for a kid who grew up in Los Angeles. And John, I don't take that lightly, and look forward for you to be a sounding board for me as we move forward. I've worked in this league for up to almost 25 years now. I've always appreciated this iconic franchise that Pat Bowlen has built, the championship tradition, the passionate fan base, and all the resources they have to win year in and year out. And being here these 4 days, I've already noticed there's special people in this building, and we're going to need an all-hands-on-deck approach if we're going to get to where we need to go. And that includes our talented young players, outstanding coaching staffs, scouts, support staff, and I can't wait to work alongside them to make that happen. I would not be here today if it weren't for the Minnesota Vikings and the Wilf ownership group, starting with Mark, Ziggy, Lenny, and the entire Wilf family. I was fortunate to work for such a first-class organization, and they treated me like family for 14 years, and I really appreciate that. I also want to thank the great players, coaches, staff, and scouts in Minnesota for the opportunity they gave me. I wouldn't be standing here if it weren't for them. Also, a special thanks to Rob Brzezinski, Scott Studwell, Coach Mike Zimmer, and especially Rick Spielman. I had the privilege of working with Rick for over 20 years with 3 different organizations, and I'm forever grateful for him for preparing me for this opportunity. And for that, Rick, I thank you and your wife, Michelle. My wife, Barb, our kids, Bo and Bella, they're so fired up to be a part of Broncos country. We look forward to calling Denver our home, and I can't wait to get them out here. Finally, I want to acknowledge the rest of my family, my mother, Carol, who turned 80 years old 2 days ago, so happy birthday, Mom. My father, Tom. I have 2 older brothers, John and Frank, and my youngest sister, Camille, and they were there from the very start. And if it wasn't for them, again, I would not be here. I cannot thank them enough for the support they've showed me through the highs and lows, the wins and losses. And for that, I'm forever grateful, and I can't wait to get them out here to Denver. My philosophy and vision, it starts with the process driven in our scouting department. There'll be no shortcuts. We're going to embrace the day-to-day. We're going to embrace the grind, and we're going to do it together. Drafting and developing players will be our foundation. It's going to be the lifeblood of this football team. We're going to be aggressive, but we're not going to be reckless in player acquisition. We're going to leave no stone unturned. There's going to be a collaborative, a positive, and diverse work environment with free-flowing ideas. Every decision made will be a consensus. It's not going to be my decision. It's not going to be Vic's or John's. It's going to be a Denver Broncos decision. We're going to be progressive. We're going to be innovative. We're going to be forward-thinking. We're going to use all the information at our disposal to make the best informed decisions. Most importantly, the personnel and the coaching staffs will work side by side to acquire and develop players who fit our vision and help us win. Together, we'll work every single day to make Broncos country proud of them. I can't wait to get started. I fully embrace this challenge and this opportunity. And finally, I'm also look forward to getting to know each of you in the media. I respect what you do and understand the important role you have connecting the team with our fan base. And with that, I will take your questions.
Okay, Mike Bliss, Denver's.
Yes, George, welcome to Denver. And happy birthday to your mom. You said she was 80 today?
2 days ago, 80 years old, Mike.
Very good. You talked about how 20 years you've been kind of at Spielman's right-hand side there. Why now did you feel this was the time, this year was the time to kind of branch out and take the big chair? And why Denver out of all the choices you've had over the years?
The interview process, when I met with John and Vic and Joe, like I said in my speech, there was a great connection. I thought we had similar visions. And then you look at the organization, you look at the winning tradition, you look at the passionate fan base, and then just all the resources they have, and that's all you can ask for, is a chance to have a chance. And the Denver Broncos, they have tremendous resources and they have a really good infrastructure. So the more I dug in, the more I learned, the more I really wanted this job bad. This was a job I really wanted.
Next one, Ryan O'Heller, Denver coach.
Hey, George, congratulations. 2 questions for you. The first one is sort of a follow-up. Was there a moment during the interview process where you felt this was going to be the right fit and you really wanted this job?
I think when I got a call from John Elway and we talked, and he kind of gave me the lay of the land, about the organization and what it meant to him, about living in Denver. And then, he talked about Pat Bowlen and talked about the resources in the community and talked about this young football team and some of the core pieces they had and just kind of talked about the season. I would say all the above is what that's kind of when I knew, I hope I had a chance to get this job.
Secondly, what was your impression? What was your evaluation of Drew Lock coming out of the draft? And also, can he be a guy you can win with moving forward?
I like Drew coming out of the draft, big arm, athletic, playmaker. I haven't studied him. I haven't got into a lot of tape. I've only been here 4 days. I've watched enough tape to know that he's talented. He can develop, but I can't comment on your second question because of that.
Next one, Artie Stapleton, Associated Press.
Hey, George. Congratulations on the gig. I'm wondering if you could kind of articulate for us your guiding principle in working with people. I know you talk about draft and develop, but I mean overall, as you work with, like you said, a consensus of opinion.
Yeah, I truly believe that everyone needs to feel like they're part of something. They have ownership within whatever they're doing, whether it's a football team, whether it's a law firm. And if they're doing the work, they need to be heard. And I truly believe that, and Rick Spielman, really is amazing at listening. And so that's how I got it from Rick. But you really have to listen and take everyone's opinion before you make a decision. And so if everyone feels like they're part of something, then I think you're going to get their best. If you empower your employees, I think you're going to get their best. And so that's my guiding principle, trying to get everyone together.
Thank you.
Eric DeLala, DenverBroncos.com.
Yeah, hey George, a couple questions for you. First, how do you feel your vision aligns with John's and Vic's?
We're aligned. We both believe, we all believe that you draft and develop talent. You draft, you bring high character players in your organization. You develop them and hopefully get them second contracts. And that's how you build your best culture. Now, will you go outside? Will you be aggressive and dip into free agency or the trade market? Yeah, every now and then, but it takes the right type of player to do that. But I think we all believe in drafting and developing and making them into your own. And that's the best way to build a football team.
And then the Chiefs are kind of the standard in the AFC West right now. What's your philosophy in terms of whether to build the Broncos in your style or build a team to compete with Kansas City?
Obviously, they're a great football team. I just think we have to look from within and just build this thing the best we can. You start looking outside. Obviously, we're aware of how good this division is, with Kansas City, and you got some up-and-coming teams, with the Raiders and the Chargers. But, you need to build within first. And we know what's out there. But we really have to build this football team. Look from within, and I think that's how you build it.
Next, we've got Nick Kosminer, The Athletic.
Hi, George. Thanks for taking the time. I'm curious about your experience playing and coaching football in Europe after you left UCLA. And I know it was a long time ago now, but it's a slightly unusual path. What did you learn from that? And is there anything that you gained that kind of maybe helped guide this path to where you're at now?
Yeah, I learned how to communicate when you don't speak the language. And, being in a huddle with a bunch of Italians that don't speak English. And so you really learn how to communicate pretty quickly, body language and that type of thing. But in all seriousness, it was a great time. I wasn't good enough to play anywhere else. And I wanted to travel and to go over to Europe and play football and get paid for it. It was unbelievable.
Next one, Brandon Cristal, KOA Radio.
George, I got two for you. The first is when you talk about working with coaches, and I guess Rick talked about what a great relationship you had with a lot of coaches in the building. He'd see you in their office and vice versa. Beyond Vic, did having Pat Shurmur here help and having an idea of the type of players that he wanted to build around or use for what he does on offense?
Yeah, Brandon, thanks. Pat was a resource, but when I was with the Vikings, we had to play against Vic, twice a year. That wasn't a lot of fun. So I've always had a lot of respect for him. And so I knew what type of players Vic wanted, at least in the defensive side of the ball. And then just, Vic and I have spent a lot of time together the last week and a half. And it's been, not only about football, but about his family. He cooked me a nice dinner the other night, so I like that. But Pat was a resource, but really Vic, just getting to know him and John and Joe during the interview process. And again, I thought we were all aligned on what we're looking for.
And then you kind of touched on following John, but on top of him, being the great John Elway, he also, I think, had the best 5-year start to a GM career in the history of football. So how do you not let that be too much pressure, I guess?
Yeah, that's going to be hard to beat right there. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to try to, work with everyone here to do our best. And but no, John's going to have to get in my ear and tell me how he did that, because that's a pretty impressive.
Next we've got Troy Rain, Denver 7.
George, thanks for joining us today. Congratulations on your position. Where does your love from football come from? And I ask because you coach freshman and sophomore. After you graduated, you were a wedge buster at UCLA. Was there a time then when you knew that you would have a career when you're sleeping on couches and working 18 hours? What is it about football? That's my first question. What is it about football that has driven you to this path, to this moment?
Thanks, Troy. Good question. Football was ingrained in me at a young age. My dad was a high school football coach, and I was 4 or 5 years old, and me and my brothers, we'd go to practice and play pickup ball and play with the players at the school. And so I knew at a young age I wanted to be like my dad. And I'd watch my dad coach and watch him relate to players of other races. So at a young age, I realized I wanted to be like my dad and be a football coach. I wanted to be a coach. I just wanted to be – actually, I wanted to be a player, but realized early that probably wasn't going to happen. So it was ingrained at a young age, with me and my family. And it's something I always wanted to do.
And now as a GM, John has talked about the hardest part is you do feel a little helpless at times because you put the roster together and you sit back and watch. When do you start having to start formulating the tough decisions? And I'll ask specifically about a Von Miller. He's been in the news. When does that process start with Von and Justin Simmons?
I think all those tough decisions start when I can meet with the coaches and the scouting staff, and that's where you get your plan for the off season. And so that's when it starts. I haven't been with the coaches yet. I haven't been with the scouts yet. So until you have your meetings and you get your plan for the off season and you develop your needs and how we're going to fill them and, the draft or free agency or, so that's when it all starts. When we can all get together and we can talk and have player evaluations. So that's when it all starts.
Thank you, George. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Denver Post.
Hey, George, I really want to ask you which of Vic's mom's recipes he fed you, but we'll save that for another time. I have two football questions. 2012 to 2015, the Broncos had huge success after John Elway got Peyton Manning to come here. How essential is the quarterback to a success of a franchise? And this team is built around defense first and quarterback, I think, second. Does that need to be switched a little bit?
The quarterback's the most important position in sports. So if you don't have stability at quarterback, you're going to have a hard time sustaining and winning. So very important, but I don't think the focus should be taken off the defense just because you want a franchise quarterback. I think we all want the franchise quarterback, and that's your number one goal, is try to draft and develop or acquire any way you can. And so, I was in Minnesota. I think we went to the playoffs with 6 different quarterbacks. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. And that's not ideal, but you can still win if you don't have the franchise guy. You can still win. And but obviously we're looking.
Okay. And the second one is, as I mentioned, all credit to John Elway for getting both Peyton Manning here and George Paton here. But Peyton Manning, John Elway's been in this franchise for a generation. Can you say no to John Elway if he wants something?
We'll have to cross that bridge when we get there. I'm 0 for 1, so we'll see how it goes.
Okay, 0 for 1 being that you accepted his offer.
I couldn't say no. No, of course, John's, we'll discuss everything. And, John has a personality where we could disagree, I'm sure. And I've enjoyed talking with John football and everything, and we'll have no problem saying no. I think that's part of football. That's part of making tough decisions is the ability to say no. And we're not going to get along in everything. And so when we don't get along, we're just going to sit down and watch the tape, or not. We don't agree, I should say. We're going to sit down and watch the tape, and if we disagree, we're going to move on. And that's football. That's how you build a team.
Thank you.
Next one, Andrew Mason, DNVR.
Hey, George, welcome to Colorado. Good to have you here. You mentioned in your opening statement being progressive, innovative, and forward-thinking as kind of a team philosophy. Looking back at your years with the Vikings, what were some examples that show the value of having this sort of philosophy for running a team?
Thanks, Andrew. I don't know if there's one specific example. I just think it's a philosophy, it's this philosophy you acquire players, whether it's a draft, whether it's free agency. And it's just not one player. It's how you build the whole team. And so once you have that build, it's easier to kind of make decisions. It just gives you more information. And the more information, the better, in this league. And it's hard to maintain an edge. And if you slow down, you're going to get passed up. So I think, we're going to have all the information. We're going to use all the data we can, and we're going to make the best possible decisions with that data.
Next, we have George Stewart from the Gazette.
Hey, George, nice to meet you. Congratulations and thanks for doing this. You signed a 6-year deal, and in your press release, the big quote everybody was talking about was, you feel like this team's a sleeping giant. How close do you think this team is to being a contender? And is this a long-term project, or do you think you could maybe wake that giant up here in the next season or two?
Hey, thanks, George. Appreciate the question. I just think they've drafted well the last couple of years. They have some good young players to build around. Now, how long it takes, I don't know. We have to do our part. But I do think there's some pieces in place, and it's a young football team. I think they're 8th, or I'm not sure, but it's a young team. They have a healthy salary cap position because of John and Matt and Joe and Rich. And so, typically in this league, you don't have a lot of time to turn things around. You don't have the 6 years. You have to. It has to be quicker. And I just think they have some pieces in place. I'm not going to give you a timetable, but they do have some young pieces in place, a healthy cap. So they have a lot of reasons to be optimistic.
Next one, Darren McKee, 104.3 The Fan.
George, congratulations. What is your analytics philosophy in personnel and in game management?
Personnel is just another piece of the equation without getting too in depth, and like character or like medical, or the evaluation is number one, and analytics is just another piece of the equation. Maybe it breaks a tie. Maybe it makes aware of a player you didn't grade as high. Maybe it gives you a red flag. So we're going to use it as just another piece. And then, I'm sorry, the second part of that was in-game management.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's great for in-game management, and it's something I think they've used here, and it's something we'll use for going forward as well.
Next one, Zach Stevens, DNVR.
Hey, George, thanks for talking with us today, and welcome to Denver. It's nice to meet you. How difficult will this year be, not just taking over in the middle of a draft process, but also with no traditional scouting combine going on and still dealing with all the COVID protocols as a first-time general manager?
Yeah, Zach, it won't be much different than last year. I mean, last year, at least we had the combine, okay? This year, obviously we're not going to have the combine, but the good thing is it's a level playing field. And 31 other teams are going through the same thing. So as I'll talk to our scouts, how are we going to maintain an edge over the rest of the league? We're going to need better background. How are we going to cover the workouts if they have them? So I just think we need to determine how we're going to separate ourselves from the other 31 teams.
Next one, Woody Cage with the Gazette.
Hello, George.
Hey, Woody.
I want to talk about the draft and development. Last year, you had 15 draft picks. The Vikings would have the best draft overall. Over the past 4 or 5 years, you've really emphasized offensive linemen, defensive linemen. Is that what the strength you think in the draft is important to you going forward based on your past? In 6 of the last 9 years, double-digit draft choices. Do you see that sort of philosophy continue where you try to pile up, particularly in the 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds? I hope that's not too complicated a question.
Yeah, thanks, Woody. I think our philosophy in Minnesota is try to acquire as many draft picks as you can. The more draft picks you have, the more flexibility you have. In the offseason, you can make a trade for a player. Draft day, you can kind of work your way up and down the draft. If you want to go get a player, you can go get them. So we always thought it was important. The more picks, the more darts, and the better chance of you hitting the bullseye. So I would like to think that would continue here. Now, every draft, it doesn't work out. Some drafts you just want to stand pat and take the guy, a really good player. So that is going to remain a philosophy here in Denver, if possible. And then I think you said offense and defensive lines. I just think that's the core of your team. I think you're going to be in every game if you have a really strong defensive line and a really strong offensive line.
Guys, time for a few more. Next one, Vic Lombardi with altitude.
Hey, George, welcome to Denver. Couple positions became available, not only yours, but as you mentioned, Matt Russell retired. Will you be hiring a right-hand man like John had, and is that totally your call?
Yes, eventually I will be hiring a right-hand man, and it is my call, 100%. I'll talk to John, I'll talk to Joe and Vic and make sure he's a really good fit. But yes, and I don't know the timetable of that. I'm not in a big hurry. I really want to evaluate the staff here. I've heard great things about the college and pro staff, so I want to see their process. I want to get to know the guys and go through a season, a scouting season with them before really making any decisions.
Next, we've got Jacob Toby with 9 years.
George, nice to meet you. Two things for you. The first being Joe Ellis talked about how he wants his front office to include more diversity within the front office, and how important is that for you to do, and how do you plan on doing that, executing that plan? And my second question for you is, you've been in this business 24 years. You've grinded, you've been with a couple teams. Was this always a dream job for you? And just how exciting is it? If it is your dream job, you have it now. So how exciting is that?
Start with the diversity. There will be a big emphasis on diversity within our scouting department, within this organization, and it starts from the top. It starts from me and Joe, and so there will be a big emphasis on that. We will have a developmental program in place for diversity, and I think it's huge. And diverse thought, you make better decisions, and we're going to have a diverse staff here. And then were you talking specifically about the Denver job or just being a GM?
Jacob, go ahead.
Being a GM. Yeah, being a GM.
GM, it's interesting because I have a lot of friends who are GMs, and it never consumed me to be a GM. It didn't. I like winning, and I like the day-to-day, and I like working with people. Was a GM in the back of my mind? Sure, but I didn't think about it during the season. I just wanted to win, no matter where I was. I don't care what my role was. I don't care if I was an intern, a pro director. My job last year, was clearly focused on winning. I'm honored to be a GM. I mean, it is really cool, but it didn't consume me the day-to-day.
Next one, Mike Kliss.
Yeah, George, when you came into the interview process, did you bring concerns about the Broncos ownership situation and the fact that you're here? What did they tell you, and what left you satisfied?
Yes. After talking with Joe, and Joe was completely upfront about the ownership situation. And listen, they have everything here to win with, and they have great leadership with Joe. He's been upfront throughout the whole interview process, and so it's not a concern of mine. I mean, again, we just need to win. You can't worry about things you can't control.
Final three, Ryan, Eric, and Brandon. Go ahead, Ryan.
Hey, George, two more for you. The first one is, how challenging will this draft process be? Because you're going to be looking at players who maybe played 3 or 4 games or opted out totally.
It's going to be very challenging. We're going to have to go back and look at, 2 years ago, maybe some. It's going to be a big challenge. And again, I'm going to put that on the college staff, and we're going to have to dig, and we're going to have to dig deeper than they've ever dug. So it's going to be challenging, but again, it's going to be challenging for 31 other teams. And how are we going to get an edge on the other teams?
And secondly, with the Vikings, you guys took some aggressive swings throughout the years with the trade market, including Diggs last year. Can you sort of take me through the mechanics of what your role was and what you learned from that experience?
We've made a lot of moves like that. And I don't really want to talk about the Diggs trade specifically, but we're going to look at every situation. We're going to be in every deal. And if it's right for the Denver Broncos, we're going to make that move.
Next one, Eric Goodman, All Sports. Eric, your headphones are muted. We'll come back to you.
Can you hear me now? Is that better? Better now?
Hey, Eric.
Hey, George. What would you like to do here that you didn't have a chance to do in Minnesota?
I would like to win a Super Bowl here.
Besides that?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I mean, I was very fortunate in Minnesota to work with Rick Spielman and Mike Zimmer and all the other coaches who really delegated, and I was involved in a lot of different areas of scouting and even non-scouting. So, you know, I've never been a GM, so I'm going to have to answer that a little later.
Thank you.
Final one, Brandon Christophe.
George, are you planning on heading down to Mobile for summer, most of the Senior Bowl week? Do you know how much staff you're bringing in? And then kind of bigger picture, how quickly are you going to be able to start delegating with this weird offseason people to do stuff? And will you rely on assistant coaches to help with a lot of the evaluation too, because of the limitations of not being able to go to the combine or maybe do as much pro day wise and all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I've already started delegating. I mean, we have a great staff. We have a great college staff here, and I'm going to start meeting with them tomorrow. And in regards to the coaches, they're going to be involved in the whole process, the interview process, and you know, typically they've always have been where I've been. So they're going to be involved, and we're going to value their opinion. And in regards to the Senior Bowl, it's still up in the air. You know, I'm just trying to see how I get through this week. I'm going to meet with the college scouting department and the pro scouting department, and then make a decision from there. So sorry I can't answer that.
Okay, George. Thanks for taking the time here, guys. What we'll do next is bring John back up on screen.
Thanks, George.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay, John, can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll start with Ryan O'Halloran with the Denver Post. Ryan, go ahead and start, please.
Hey, John, you guys interviewed all first-time GM candidates. What about George's experience was appealing to you?
Well, obviously, anytime you have 25 years of history in this league and, you know, and his background and where he's been, and I think that, you know, his reputation within the league is tremendous. And so I think all those things combined, you know, put him at the top of the list, and we're just thrilled that it worked out. But think that, you know, George's reputation, I think, is unmatched up to this point for all the, you know, first-time GMs. And so, you know, and the thing I really liked was the fact that he had other opportunities. I said in the opening is that he had other opportunities. And, you know, this was, a guy that wasn't just looking to jump as a GM, but was looking for the right situation and wanted to be great at what he did. And it was that was the key thing is he wanted to be great at what he does. And he also wants to have the resources and the ability to do what he wants to do. And I think that he saw that in Denver. He has that opportunity, and you know, so we're thrilled that he took the job.
Next one, we've got Troy Ray, Denver 7.
John, thanks for the time. You had told me when you changed positions that you would be involved in big decisions, and that included Von Miller. Will that include Justin Simmons? And how does that work then? You obviously let George get settled, but will you be involved in those, John, or are you going to let him assess it and then kind of report back to you what he thinks you guys should do specifically with Von and Justin?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, George is going to do his work on both those situations. Obviously, he's got to get acclimated to the new position and the new job, get to know everybody. And there's a lot of different things that are going to go on. And, you know, obviously Von and Justin are two of the bigger things that, you know, he's going to have to address. And so I'm going to, like I said, when I moved up, I plan on being a sounding board for him, and any information that I can give him to help him make a better decision, I'm going to do. And so that's kind of my role, and a role that I'm looking forward to, especially with knowing everybody in the building and the team. And so to be able to help George and support him in any way I can.
Guys, we'll do a few more before bringing Vic up. Go ahead, Brandon Christophe.
John, kind of back to what you were saying about George versus the other candidates. Because you had knowledge a decade ago of what you didn't know and had to rely on other people around you, the fact that he had been doing so many different things over so many years on the personnel side, was that what made him the most attractive? Was that he checked the most boxes because he had done it all, I guess?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, you look at the track record where he'd been and what they'd done in Minnesota. They had a tremendous track record up there, and it had success up there, and done a lot of good things in the draft as far as moving around the draft, as well as what they did in free agency and adding certain pieces that they needed to add. So, you know, I think the one thing too is you look at it, they were always aggressive, you know, and always trying to get better, and it may not be the most popular thing to do, but if they thought it was the best thing for the Minnesota Vikings, that's what they did, and I'm sure that he was a big piece of that conversation. So therefore, you want a guy that's not afraid to take chances, and then will do not necessarily the popular thing, but what's the best thing for the Denver Broncos, and I think that was one thing that was very intriguing.
Next one, Andrew Mason.
Hey, John, in the interviews you had with George, what sort of impression did he make? And did he say anything that really jumped out that kind of cut to the heart of what the organization needs right now?
No, I mean, I think that, as George said, I thought, the interview was, anytime you go through an interview and it's 3.5 hour interview and it seems, and it goes very fast, you have common thoughts. And I think that that's what that interview went through. And I think that it hit on all cylinders, not only with me, but with Joe as well as Vic. And so, I think that, all of us felt that, he was the right guy, and not necessarily similar thoughts, but an idea of the way he did things, his work ethic and the way that he goes about and how they dig everything they possibly can on every single football player. I thought was very good. So, he touched bases with all of us, and I think that's what was really good about it. In fact, is that we were able to get him to come and be our GM.
Final two we'll do is Woody Page and Mark Kizla. Go ahead, Woody.
Oh, John, I'm a little bit unclear, and I'm stupid, as you know, about in your role. You said you're still the president of football operations. If the general manager comes to you and says, I want to trade 3 first-round draft choices and 2-star players for, I don't know, a franchise-type quarterback, is he still going to be able to make that decision, or does that come into your realm as the president of football operations that you can veto that,
No.
or just add your input?
No, I'm going to add my input. Obviously, when it has a huge impact on something like you're talking about, that when you have something that is that big an impact on the organization, but ultimately it's going to be George's decision. So I'm there going to be able to, like I said, to support him, give my opinions, give him everything that I would look at when I was a GM, and kind of give him everything that would be in my mind and look in that situation, and then be able to help him make that decision, the best decision he possibly can. And once he hears everything, then, but he'll still be the one making that decision, because that's his role and that's his responsibility. So as I said, I'm here to, support him in any way I possibly can and give him my viewpoints, but it's going to be his decision.
Final one, Mark Kizla.
Well, I think, if Woody and me, the last 2 questions, it's kind of like Dumb and Dumber, but I'll give it a shot here. Since Peyton Manning, you've taken a lot of swings at quarterback. Where do you think you are with Drew Lock, and how do you evaluate your quarterback situation right now?
Well, I'm still high on Drew. I think he's got the physical abilities to do it. I think that this year was essentially his rookie year. I think he was put behind the 8 ball with everything that went on with COVID, with no offseason, especially with a young offense, a new offensive coordinator. So I think that, it was not by any means an ideal situation for Drew. But I think that, by any means, I'm going to say that obviously we're going to continue to look at that position. You always are, and look at opportunities that you have. And George will go through that whole process. And then if there's an ability for us to get better in that position, better than we think we have, then I think George will make that decision. But I think there'll be a lot of thought that goes into it. But I think, as I said, I still think that Drew's a young guy. Obviously, he showed flashes this year. He had mistakes. Young quarterbacks, always make mistakes. I made a million mistakes my first 2-3 years. But it's how you can learn from those. And so, those are the things that, George will have to look at. We'll all be looking at. Vic will be looking at. The fact is, trying to find that guy that, can step in and be successful in that position. Doesn't necessarily have to be the franchise guy, but has to be able to allow us and give us a chance to win and be able to make plays to give us a chance to win. So, that's where the quarterback situation is. Obviously, it's a very difficult position to find, but I think that, Drew did a nice job this year, but George will continue to look to fill that spot if we don't think that, Drew's that guy.
Okay, John, thanks for taking the time. Guys, next up, we'll bring down Vic for a couple questions. ready to roll.
Okay.
Okay, Ryan, why don't you start us off with some questions for Vic?
Sure. Hey, Vic. In your meetings with George, what stood out about the connection you guys can create?
Well, I just was impressed with George from the start in that, a lot of guys have the fancy titles around the league, whether it be in coaching or administration. He was the assistant general manager up there, but you could tell very early on that he truly was the assistant general manager there. He's handled and been experienced in all facets of the job of being a general manager. I don't think anything that he comes across here is going to be new to him. He's been there right on the front line with the Vikings, truly as the assistant general manager, not just a fancy title. And that's what was appealing to me. He's obviously very experienced and well-versed and prepared for this job in a very, very good way.
Excellent, Troy Wright.
Vic, thanks for joining us today. Vic, how does that evaluation of the quarterback position go? Does he look at it and then go back to you and say, hey, here's what I saw? Because you obviously lived it the last year and a half with Drew. I guess take me through what you think the mechanics of that will be. And as George evaluates Drew and then kind of rediscuss it with you.
Yeah, I think the best way is for George to go and evaluate him himself and not have myself or Pat or Mike influence his thinking. Let him take a sterile, unbiased look at it, and then we can come back together and he can express his views based on what he's seeing. Obviously, we can answer some questions for him, like he might be wondering what he was being told in this situation or that situation, and maybe clear up a question or two that he might have. But I think it's best for him to form his own opinion without the influence of me or any of the other coaches here.
Next one here, Joel.
Hey, Vic, you mentioned a couple weeks ago you were hoping to get a GM who had a vision and is able to stick to that vision. Do you get the sense from George that that's the type of guy he is?
I do. I think, vision's a big, all-encompassing word, and as we all know in the NFL, your vision can sometimes be altered by what's available, what you can do, what you already have in-house, and there are some limitations in fulfilling that vision totally. And I've been involved with 2 expansion franchises where you start from scratch, and it's even hard to stick to the ultimate vision in that aspect also. So you always have to be flexible and adaptable and be able to adjust to the situations at hand. And I think George has a vision. He obviously wants to build the team through the draft, as we all do. But there are other avenues to improve the team. We're well versed at that at Minnesota. George is right in the middle of all that, and we'll explore any and all avenues to improve the team.
Excellent, Brandon Cristal, and 2 more after that. Go ahead, Brandon.
Coach, 2 quick ones for you. Did Pat Shermer have any influence at all before you met with George, or did you not need it? Maybe talk to him about your thoughts on George after maybe the first meeting, and then most importantly, what did you end up making him the other night when he came to dinner at your house?
Well, he hadn't been here long enough to get the meatballs yet. He's got to prove his worth before he gets meatballs, but he's well on his way there. So he just had a regular steak dinner the other night. But obviously, with Pat working with him for, I believe it was 2 years in Minnesota very recently, obviously we all asked Pat what his thoughts were of George, and Pat was double thumbs up, so right from the get-go. So that was quick and easy.
Final 2, Mark Gisley, Andrew Mason.
Hey, Vic. We all know the bottom line in this business is winning. After 2 years, you're 12-20, but you were very involved in this interview process. Where do you stand right now? You made him a steak dinner, but is he going to have to make a tough decision on you a year from now?
That's just life in the NFL. He might have to, but I'm not worried about that in any shape or form. I know he's not either. And we're going to do everything we can to make the 2021 Broncos a winning team.
Final one, Andrew.
Vic came out this week, no combine this year. So how is that going to change the information gathering process for you leading to the draft? And also, what did you all learn from last year's offseason that you can refine and improve upon in the next few months, since it looks like this draft process is going to look a lot like last year's?
Well, we're just going to have to do a good job of digging, like George said. The coaches are going to have to chip in the dig. Scouts are going to have to dig. We're going to have to use anything and anybody to help us get the necessary information we need on these players in the draft. And in regards to last year, obviously when COVID hit last year and things had to be done virtually, it was new for a lot of us. Now it's not going to be new. We're going to be more well-versed in it, and it should be more of a smooth process if we have to go that route again. And I think we'll all be better for it.